Hey guys, tonight we're diving straight into a story where love sparks thunder, jealousy shapes the stars, and you get turned into a cow for being too pretty. Classic bedtime stuff, right? So picture this. You're a priestess walking barefoot through dew-kissed fields, the scent of myrrh clinging to your robes. Birds coo lazily in the olive trees overhead. You bow before Hera's temple, whispering prayers you've known since childhood, prayers meant to keep gods at bay. But as your lips move, you don't realize someone is watching. Not a villager, not a soldier. Zeus. Yeah, that Zeus. The one who throws lightning like a toddler tosses toys. The one who's married, very married, to Hera, the literal queen of Olympus, goddess of marriage and revenge. And she's not into sharing. But Zeus, he doesn't care. He sees you and decides you're beautiful. Not in a respectful, may I offer you a poem kind of way. No, more like, I will summon thunderclouds and change your entire life on a whim kind of way. That's his love language. So what does he do? He descends in disguise, maybe a silver mist, maybe a charming shepherd with eyes too blue to be real. Historians still argue whether Zeus actually seduced Io or used full-on magical coercion. Whatever happened, one thing's certain: Hera finds out. And when she does, the sky splits open. Not metaphorically. Actual clouds shred apart like paper. Thunder growls through the air like an angry stomach. If you're anywhere near the action, you're probably regretting not staying in bed. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing how far this little storytelling corner stretches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You, Io, stand frozen in the temple courtyard. The wind picks up, swirling your tunic, tugging at your hair like nervous fingers. Something's wrong. The air feels heavier, charged. You squint up at the sky and see storm clouds boiling in fast. Not your average spring drizzle. This is Zeus weather. A bright bolt cracks from the heavens, striking so close the ground vibrates beneath your sandals. And just like that, he's there. Not in disguise this time. No illusions. Just full king of the gods energy, glimmering gold and white, radiating heat like a sunbeam with boundary issues. He doesn't say much. He rarely does. But his presence fills your chest with something like awe, something like fear. He reaches for your hand, and you don't pull away. But someone else is watching. Far away on Olympus, Hera lifts her head from a golden couch. She knows. She always knows. One heartbeat out of rhythm in the world below, and her ears perk up like a bloodhound on Olympus's finest imported wine. She rises. Now, you'd think the goddess of marriage would be above petty jealousy. You'd be wrong. Hera has a reputation in mythology. Let's just say she doesn't exactly send have a great life fruit baskets to Zeus's mistresses. She sends storms, madness, giant crabs. This time it's worse. She descends in full regalia, hair wound into spirals of gold, robes embroidered with starlight and peacock feathers. Her eyes glow with the calm fury of someone who's caught their partner cheating for the millionth time. You try to run, but Zeus reacts faster. He panics. Thinks, what's less suspicious than a girl standing next to me? Answer, a cow. So he zaps you. Suddenly, your skin itches all over. Your fingers melt together, arms thicken, hair bristles along your spine. Your scream turns into a low, frightened moo. Your bones twist, reshape, and before you can say, wait, what? Just a smooth, trembling, innocent-looking white heifer, blinking up at the gods. Zeus smiles like a man who's definitely been caught red-handed in the fridge at 3 a.m. Oh, Hera, he says, look what I found. A lovely little cow. Isn't she something? Hera raises one eyebrow. She's not buying it. But she smiles back, sweet as poison. Darling, she purrs. She's beautiful. May I have her? Zeus hesitates. You, in cow form, try to give him your best don't you dare expression, but it's hard when your tongue won't stop chewing imaginary cud. Still he caves. Of course he does, because Zeus is many things, but he's not suicidal. Of course, dear, he says. And just like that, you, the girl turned cow, become Hera's new pet. You're not just in trouble anymore. You're in Olympian trouble. Some say this moment wasn't just myth, it was allegory. Ancient Greeks often used stories like these to explain why certain constellations existed, or how natural phenomena had divine roots. Was Io really a girl? Or was she a metaphor for the moon, always chased by jealous clouds? Scholars still debate it. But for now, one thing's clear. You've gone from beloved priestess to celestial scapegoat, and Hera's only just begun. You don't get much sleep that night. Not that cows usually worry about sleep schedules, but you're still you, still Io, still very much aware of your body, even if it's covered in smooth white hide now. Your thoughts are human, tangled and racing. Your tongue, however, now does this annoying thing where it flops out to lick your own nose. Constantly. The temple courtyard is different from down here, bigger, more menacing. You've been moved from your priestess quarters to the outer pens because gods apparently think cows should be near hay and wooden troughs. Your legs are wobbly, your hooves clack awkwardly across stone, and when you try to scream, you moo! Loudly, pathetically. And Hera? Oh, Hera is thrilled. She visits you early the next morning, humming softly as she walks among the sacred animals. She strokes the feathers of a golden rooster, coos at a peacock trailing its jeweled tail. And then she reaches you. Well, well, she says, tilting her head. What a pretty little thing you are. Her fingers are cold as she runs them along your flank. Not cruel, not rough, just unnervingly calm. You lock eyes with her, and something ancient trembles in your gut. You've worshipped her your whole life, burned offerings, sung hymns, swept her temple floor by hand. You were her priestess. Now you're livestock. Zeus watches from afar, perched uncomfortably on a nearby cloud. He tries to act casual, but he's got that anxious look husbands get when their wives are being a little too nice at a dinner party. He calls down, "Everything all right, dear?" "Perfect," Hera replies, still petting your back. She turns to him with a syrupy smile. "Actually, I was wondering, would you mind if I kept this one? As a gift. She's just so docile." Zeus blinks, coughs, looks at you, then back at Hera. He knows the rules. In god marriage, gifts can't be taken back. "Of course," he mutters. And just like that, you're hers. Let's pause here for a second and remember that ancient mythology is wild. People back then didn't just tell these stories for fun. They used them to explain things. Why lightning strikes, why women suffer, why some stars look like cows. But even within that framework, this story is a Greek soap opera with shape-shifting and surveillance. Which brings us to the next twist in your tale, paranoia. Because Hera doesn't trust Zeus. Not one bit. She's no fool. You're far too elegant for a cow. Those big eyes? Suspicious. That little patch of white fur shaped like a crescent moon? Clearly divine meddling. And the way you keep trying to write SOS messages in the dirt with your hooves? Yeah, something's off. So what does she do? She summons a storm. But not the usual lightning and hail Zeus-flavored one. This is subtler. A quiet fog creeps in at dusk, veiling the temple in soft, shifting mist. It curls around columns, slips beneath doors, seeps through keyholes. Even the birds stop singing. Zeus tries to cover his tracks, literally. He wraps the whole temple complex in clouds, hoping the fog will obscure Io's presence. He thinks, if Hera can't see her, she can't suspect her. This is frankly a dumb plan, because Hera smells lies the way a bloodhound smells bacon. The thicker the fog gets, the more suspicious she becomes. She strolls around the mist-shrouded courtyard in a velvet cloak, peering into the haze, whispering to the air. She's here, she murmurs to no one. I can feel her. Let's step back and talk myth mechanics for a moment. According to some ancient texts, this part of the story plays into seasonal cycles. The mist? It might represent early winter fogs over Argos, where Io supposedly lived. Some scholars believe the tale allegorizes the moon being veiled, or the earth goddess hidden during darker months. But again, historians still argue whether this myth has agricultural roots or if it's just divine family drama with a cow twist. Either way, Hera's not done. The next morning, she dispels the mist with a flick of her wrist, and there you are, standing in a sunbeam, chewing a daisy, busted. There's a long silence as Hera narrows her eyes, her smile fades. You, Io the cow, lower your head, ears twitching nervously. You don't need to speak human to understand what's coming. Zeus sighs. Somewhere above, a thundercloud shrinks guiltily. Fine, Hera says at last, her voice clipped. She's mine now. She says it like a queen claiming a province, and from that moment forward, you are under her control. No escape, no sanctuary, just hooves, hay, and Hera. The goddess sets up a pen for you in her own divine garden, a place bursting with sacred plants and peacocks that judge you with every feathered blink. You try to find comfort in the rhythms of cow life, grazing, lying down, twitching at flies. But you're not really a cow. You're a girl trapped in a disguise, waiting for someone to notice, to help. Spoiler, help is coming. Eventually. But Hera? She's just getting warmed up. She doesn't believe in second chances. She believes in long-term punishment. You see, in the logic of Olympus, everything Zeus loves must be made an example of. And if you have to move through the rest of your days to prove a point, so be it. So, while you chew on clover and stare mournfully at the stars, remember, the gods aren't done with you yet. Not by a long shot. You'd think at some point, things would hit rock bottom. But being a cow in Hera's personal petting zoo has layers of indignity. And just when you're starting to get used to the flavor of wild onions and temple dust, things take a turn from weird to what did I ever do to deserve this? Because Hera, she's not content with just owning you. She wants to watch you closely. So she calls in reinforcements. Not a priest, not a maidservant. Oh no, that'd be too human, too normal. She calls Argus Panoptis. Let's talk about Argus for a second. His nickname, All-Seeing. His hobby, guard duty. His main feature, 100 eyes, scattered all over his body. Some on his face, some on his arms, some on his elbows. It's not clear whether he even blinks. Well, technically, 50 eyes sleep while the other 50 stay open, nature's original security system. Hera summons him with a clap of thunder. Watch the cow, she says. And that's it. You're now under the full-time surveillance of a walking eyeball farm. You try to wander to the edge of the garden. He blocks you. You try to scratch your ear against a tree. He sighs and herds you back toward the center. You stop to admire a butterfly. He notes it like a suspicious movement. The thing is, Argus isn't mean. He's just diligent, relentless. The kind of guy who'd read every footnote in a scroll just because it's there. In another life, he probably would have made a fantastic librarian or overly enthusiastic bouncer. But here, he's your warden. You try everything, fast trots, sudden stops, the cow equivalent of fake crying. Nothing works. And now Hera sleeps easy, her new prize under constant observation. But Zeus seethes. Not because he misses you. Let's be real, his attention span is shorter than a goldfish with insomnia. But because someone dared to outmaneuver him. And worse, that someone was his wife, again. So what does he do? He calls Hermes. Now, Hermes is a different kind of god, younger, funnier, sneakier, known for winged sandals, silver tongue, and being the only Olympian who could probably survive a modern job interview. Zeus leans in close and whispers, "I need you to get that cow out of there," quietly. Hermes raises an eyebrow. "You want me to outwit the guy with 100 eyes?" Zeus shrugs. "You've done dumber things," which, to be fair, is true. Here's a historical tidbit that gets glossed over in most myths. Hermes wasn't just the messenger god. He was also the patron of thieves, tricksters, and people who bend the rules. He's the loophole guy. If there were ancient lawyer jokes, Hermes would star in all of them. So the plan begins. You, meanwhile, are not having a good week. You've been mooing sad songs into the wind, scrawling hooved messages in the dirt. Zeushelp, though spelling with hooves is hard, and trying not to cry every time Argus interrupts your attempt to nap under a laurel tree. Then one afternoon, a new sound floats in. Music. Soft, sweet, something between a lullaby and a story told in melody. You perk up your ears. It's Hermes. He strolls into the grove like he belongs there. Bare feet barely brushing the grass, lyre in hand, wings on his heels shimmering like dragonfly wings in sunlight. He doesn't even look at Argus, just starts playing. Argus narrows 50 of his eyes. "What are you doing?" he asks. "Just passing through," Hermes hums. "Thought I'd tell a story." Argus is a sucker for stories. He's spent centuries staring at things. He loves a good tale. He folds his many arms and settles in, and Hermes begins. He weaves a tale about a sleepy shepherd, a cursed flute, a god who sang the stars into the sky. His fingers pluck strings that shimmer like sunlight on water. He speaks softly, rhythmically, almost dreamlike. One by one, Argus's eyes begin to close. Not all at once. First a dozen, then 30, then 70, each eye flickering, fluttering, falling. You watch, heart pounding beneath your white-furred chest. By the time Hermes ends his song, only 2 eyes remain open. They blink slowly, struggle, and then closed, silence. Hermes stands, walks softly to Argus, draws a curved blade. You turn away. There's no moo, no shriek, just the soft sigh of a body hitting mossy ground. When you look again, Argus is still, every eye closed, like a field of tiny suns going dark. Hermes cuts your tether. "Come on, girl," he whispers. "Let's get you out of here." But the story doesn't end there. Because Hera feels it. The moment Argus dies, her peacocks scream, the skies shift, her eyes flick open on Olympus, and she knows. She rushes to the garden and finds Argus's body laid out beneath the trees. 100 eyes forever closed. Her loyal servant, her watcher. She kneels. For once, she doesn't curse, doesn't scream. Instead, she plucks each eye gently and places them in the tail of her favorite bird. And that's why, even now, peacocks shimmer with those eerie, unblinking spots. A tribute, a memorial, a warning. Hera doesn't forget, and she's not done with you yet. You don't get far. The escape is messy, always is when your legs bend the wrong way and your tail has a mind of its own. Hermes pulls you along through forest and field, his winged sandals barely touching the grass, while you trip over roots, moo at completely the wrong moments, and keep getting distracted by things that smell like lunch. The sun dips behind the hills. Stars peek out. Somewhere behind you, a peacock screams. I did not sign up for cow herding, Hermes mutters, dodging another low branch as you charge past him, eyes wide and wild. And then you hear it. Psst, it's not loud, not at first, just an itch behind your ears. You flick your tail, swish your head, but it doesn't go away. The buzzing grows louder, higher, sharper. It's not a regular fly. It's not of this world. It's Hera's latest gift to you, a gadfly. Not just any gadfly, the most persistent soul-splitting insect in mythological existence. It dives straight for your flank and stings. You yelp, moo, buck. Hermes tries to grab your halter. Too late. You're off like a thunderbolt with hooves, crashing through brambles, galloping across fields, scattering sheep and villagers, and even one deeply confused satyr who was just trying to nap under a fig tree. This is your new life now. Running. From the gods. From the sting. From everything. The gadfly doesn't rest. It zips and zags and stabs, always just behind your ear, always right where you can't reach. Hera doesn't need a jail cell anymore. She's outsourced your torment to nature itself. And so begins the long, ridiculous, utterly tragic road trip of Io the cow. You cross rivers and mountains. Each time you stop, gasping, legs trembling, the fly returns. You plunge into streams to escape it, only to leap out seconds later when it follows you across the water like a mosquito on divine steroids. At one point, you try hiding in a cave. The fly waits outside. You moo, defeated. Let's take a moment to pause here and unpack the absurdity. The ancient Greeks, serious scholars, astronomers, and poets passed this story down for centuries. A divine cow pursued by an evil fly. And not just passed down, but believed in. Carved into temple walls, woven into star charts. Why? Some historians say it symbolizes guilt, that lingering, buzzing reminder of mistakes you can't undo. Others argue it reflects natural migration patterns, maybe tied to early trade routes. And some just think it's a celestial prank with moral seasoning. But one thing's for sure, this cow is on the move. You dash across the Peloponnese, hooves cracking the ancient roads of Corinth. You leap over rivers that don't yet have names. Wherever you run, new myths form in your wake. In Thrace, people call you a wandering spirit, cursed by the heavens. In Lydia, you're a ghost cow of vengeance. Kids whisper that if you hear buzzing in the night, Io is near. You do manage to get a moment's peace by hiding in a mountain meadow, surrounded by sleepy sheep. You finally lie down. You're exhausted. Your ears droop. The stars above twinkle like kind eyes. And for the first time in days, you sleep. But the buzzing returns by morning. By now, you've galloped halfway across the known world. Your hooves are cracked. Your spirit is tired. You miss your name. You miss your hands. You miss being able to eat bread without having to bite it off a bush. And yet, there's something else happening too. In every town, someone sees you and feels something. They feed you, pray to you, leave offerings at the edge of the forest. Little girls whisper secrets into your ear like you're sacred. And slowly, painfully, your story begins to evolve. You're not just Zeus's victim or Hera's toy anymore. You're a symbol, a myth, a moving constellation of meaning. Still, that doesn't help with the fly. You reach the Bosporus Strait. Yes, the Bosporus. That name literally means cows crossing. Supposedly because you swam across it, desperate and mad, pursued by Hera's stingy air force. The current tugs at you as you plunge into the strait, gasping, legs kicking beneath the waves. Salt burns your eyes. The fly hovers overhead. But you make it. Dripping and gasping, you clamber onto the opposite shore, from Europe into Asia. You collapse on a stony beach, chest heaving. And for a few sacred minutes, it is quiet. Then the buzzing starts again. You moo the longest, saddest moo a cow has ever mooed. And you run again, across the plains of Phrygia, through the mountains of Anatolia, each footstep carving itself into future maps and legends. You are no longer a girl, not really a cow either. You're a myth in motion. You start to lose track of time. It's all the same: sting, run, collapse, repeat, until you stumble onto the banks of a wide green river, the Nile. You don't know it yet, but you're close to something different, something sacred. The fly buzzes once, twice, then disappears. You blink, dazed, and in the distance, pyramids glint under the sun like sleeping giants. Maybe, just maybe, you've reached the edge of Hera's wrath. You don't trust it at first: the stillness, the silence, the absence of that awful buzzing. You twitch your ears, expecting the gadfly to come screaming back out of the reeds like some kind of tiny avenging banshee, but it doesn't. The Nile wind brushes your fur, warm, dry, gentle. You're standing on the edge of the Egyptian delta, blinking at a horizon that looks less like punishment and more like possibility. Papyrus rustles. Egrets pick their way through the shallows. And the sky? It's not crowded with gods watching your every move for once. It's just wide, open, vast. And that's when something shifts inside you. Not a thunderbolt, not a divine glow. Just a soft, slow melting, like a dream curling at the edges as morning arrives. Your legs shiver, your breath shortens, your body begins to change. At first, you think you're dying, but then your spine straightens, your hooves soften. Your mouth pulls into a human shape. Your skin, raw and scabbed from weeks of running, knits itself smooth again. It hurts. Oh, it hurts. But it's also beautiful. And when it's done, you're standing in the river, waist deep, trembling, but human again. Naked, yes. Filthy, but unmistakably Io. A woman once more. You cry, not a moo, not a startled yelp, just a raw human sob. The reeds sway around you like curtains, and for the first time in what feels like centuries, you kneel and drink from the water, not like an animal, but like someone who remembers what it's like to taste with a soul. Let's pause to marvel at that, shall we? Because this part of the myth, the restoration in Egypt, is loaded with interpretation. Historians still debate whether Io's transformation back into human form represents rebirth, redemption, or even the fusion of Greek and Egyptian mythologies. Some versions claim she gave birth to a son here. Others say she was worshipped as Isis herself. But one thing's agreed on: Egypt is where the torment ends, and something new begins. You're taken in by the local priests, men who look at you with awe and kindness, not hunger or suspicion. They bathe you, clothe you, give you food that isn't grass. And you're not just accepted, you're honored. They've seen the omens: a pale woman crossing the Bosporus, a great white cow, the strange dreams that haunted their temples for weeks. You are their prophecy come true, their living myth. You become queen. Yes, queen. The Greeks said you married the Egyptian king and bore him children. Some say your son was Epaphus, a child born of Zeus himself, destined to rule Egypt and pass that divine legacy down through generations. Others say you became a goddess in your own right, merging with the identity of Isis, the mother goddess who rules birth and rebirth, pain and healing. It's a glow-up for the ages. From priestess to cow to international deity. You might even call it legendary cow closure. But let's not sugarcoat it. You still have scars. Every time a fly buzzes by your ear, you flinch. You don't trust clouds anymore. You wake up some nights with the taste of clover in your mouth and panic rising in your chest. Trauma doesn't vanish just because your shape changes, but you carry it well. You walk through golden courtyards with your head held high. You smile at children. You offer grain to sacred bulls in the temples. You tell your story, softly, carefully, to those who will carry it forward. And across the sea, on Mount Olympus, the gossip never stops. "Oh, that girl," the gods murmur. "Still mortal, still making temples in her name, Zeus's little cow queen." But Hera? Hera says nothing. She watches from afar, peacock feathers fanned at her back like a crown. She doesn't attack you again, doesn't send flies or monsters. Because the game has changed. She's lost her prize, and she's already planning her next move, but we'll get to that. For now, you're something else. You're not just a survivor. You're a legend with a capital L. People build altars to you, sing songs about your journey, etch images of a cow crossing continents into temple walls. Your hooves have become symbols. Your pain, a pilgrimage. Your face, human, radiant, is lifted to the stars in story and stone. And slowly those stories drift back to Greece. to Argos, to Delos, even to Olympus itself. The stars listen, and they're not done with you yet. Because while your body may be done running, your story still has miles to go. In fact, it's just now catching the attention of the sky. You think it's over. How could it not be? You've crossed seas and continents, been cursed, chased, stung, transformed, restored. You've gone from divine plaything to queen of one of the greatest civilizations the world will ever know. You should be able to rest now, right? But Olympus never really lets go, especially not when you've left such a public mess in your wake. See, Hera may have let you go in the mortal sense, but immortality? That's a different game. She doesn't forget the humiliation, doesn't forget how Zeus lied to her, again, and how you, however unwilling, became part of that lie. So even though you're far away now, ruling, mothering, healing, Hera is still watching. And she has one final card to play. But first, a quick peek back up the divine food chain. Zeus, meanwhile, has opinions. For a god who turns into swans, bulls, and golden rain, he's surprisingly emotional about your journey. Not emotional in the wow, I'm sorry for what you went through kind of way. More like, hey, at least she's famous now, right? Classic Zeus. Still, there's a flicker of something else. Guilt, maybe, or possessiveness disguised as godly pride. Whatever it is, he does what he always does when he feels things he can't process. He points to the sky and says, make it eternal. This is how myths become constellations, because in ancient Greek belief, stars weren't just twinkly decorations, they were memorials. Caution signs, eternal reminders. When something really dramatic happened, the gods would sling the characters into the heavens, often as animals, so everyone could stare up and remember what not to do. And Hera? She hears the whisper, feels that old coil of vengeance rise in her chest. One last move, one last sting. Not on your body, no, that part's done. But your memory? That's fair game. And so, one still night, under a quiet sky over Egypt, the stars begin to shift. You stand on your palace balcony, looking up, feeling something strange stir in your bones, like deja vu mixed with static. You rub your arm. The wind's warm, but your skin prickles, and far above, a new shape appears. Taurus, not a warrior, not a queen, not a goddess or mother. Those watching from Earth don't realize it first. It just looks like a new star grouping. But in time, they start to tell stories. She was beautiful, they say, too beautiful. She ran and ran. The gods chased her. In the end, they caught her and made her live among the stars. The myth mutates. They forget your name. They remember your shape. And just like that, Hera gets her final say. Because she didn't just curse you with transformation. She immortalized it. You might have healed, ruled, borne children, become divine in your own right. But the sky remembers you as the cow. And that's legacy with a lowercase l. Let's detour for a moment, because this part of the myth is where scholars really start arguing. Some say the Taurus constellation represents Io. Others claim it was meant for Europa, another of Zeus's unlucky crushes turned bovine. Still others argue Taurus predates Greek myth entirely and was co-opted into Olympian symbolism after the fact. But the pattern's there, etched into the heavens like a cosmic inside joke. You, a cow, forever. And yet, there's something kind of beautiful about it too. Because yes, Hera branded you, but she also acknowledged you. She couldn't erase what happened, couldn't undo your story. So she did the next best divine thing. She etched it where everyone could see it. Every season, every sailor, every shepherd in a moonlit field, they see you. Not the pain, not the panic, just the form. Horns raised, body poised in eternal stride. Strong, unbending, glimmering through the dark like a secret only the stars can whisper. And maybe, just maybe, that's not punishment. Maybe it's a kind of strange mythic justice. You were never given a choice, but in the sky you become a symbol, not of shame, but of survival. You outlast the gods. The temples crumble, the kings fall, empires drown in sand, but you rise every spring. You light the path for dreamers, navigators, and lovers staring skyward, wondering what stories are written above them. Somewhere, Hera watches still. Not with anger, maybe. Not anymore. Just with that cold Olympian smirk. Because while Zeus wanted you remembered forever, Hera made sure the form of that memory carried her mark. But you shine anyway. Because even if the shape is hers, the light, that's all yours. By now, your name echoes in ways no priestess, no cow, no queen could have ever imagined. Io, a two-letter sigh threaded through myths, painted in stars, scribbled in scroll margins across centuries. And while your body stays behind, buried in the sands of Egypt, or perhaps never buried at all, your story roams further than even your hooves ever did. But the family drama? Oh, that's just beginning. See, you didn't just survive the gods, you gave birth to a lineage. Let's talk about Epaphus. Depending on which version you hear, he's either born to you in Egypt, conceived during your madness, a child of Zeus, or adopted after your marriage to the Egyptian king. Either way, he's yours. A symbol of divine restoration. A son who walks the line between human and God, between pain and purpose. Epaphus grows up surrounded by temples and rivers, stories and expectation. He doesn't remember the cow part, thankfully, but your legend wraps around him like a second skin. And through him, your blood seeps into future myths. Because guess who your descendants include? Danaus, Aegyptus, Cadmus, Europa, and way, way down the family tree, Perseus, Heracles, even Helen of Troy if you follow some branches. That's right, you, Io the Tormented, become the great-great-grand everything of half the Iliad. Now that's mythic influence. And with every generation, the echoes of your journey get fuzzier. You become shorthand for suffering woman, a prototype, a poetic caution. By the time playwrights get their hands on your story, like Aeschylus in Prometheus Bound, you're not even speaking anymore. You're mooing on stage, wailing. Your torment becomes performance, symbolism, and people eat it up. Let's talk about that for a second, because real talk, you become a genre. Ancient tragedy loved women like you, wronged by gods, deformed by fate, wandering in madness. And your story had all the ingredients: beauty, betrayal, transformation, suffering, just enough redemption to seem fair, and a tidy celestial ending. It's like the myth version of a three-act structure, but it's also exhausting because you know what the world rarely talks about? What happens after? What it's like to live in the aftermath of divine punishment. To carry on with a life where your every step is traced in someone else's footprints. Zeus's shadow, Hera's wrath. To raise a son under the eyes of priests who still whisper, "That's her, the one who ran from Olympus." You rule, yes. You smile for carvings. You sit on your throne with grace. But there are nights when you dream of grass between your teeth. When you wake from deep sleep, panicked that you've lost your hands. When you hear buzzing and shiver, not out of fear, but out of memory. The scars aren't visible, but they itch. Somewhere across the sea on Olympus, Zeus hardly notices. He's distracted by another mortal, another golden disguise. For him, it's Tuesday. For you, it was a lifetime. And Hera? She gets what she wanted. You're remembered, but not for who you are, for what you were turned into. That's the sting that never quite fades. Still, there's power in surviving a story that was never written for your benefit. There's power in the quiet ways you reclaim it. Every time someone tells your tale and their voice cracks on the part where you run barefoot through Anatolia, stung by grief and wings, that's a kind of justice. Every time a girl learns your name before she learns Zeus's, that's victory. And you are not alone, because across the myths, across the cultures, there are others. Leda, Callisto, Daphne, all caught in god games, all reshaped, rewritten, reimagined. But you? You were the first to become a constellation. That's not punishment. That's legacy. Sure, the form is bovine. Sure, the backstory's brutal. But the light still shines. And centuries from now, when someone in the middle of nowhere looks up and sees Taurus glinting in the spring sky, they won't think Zeus. They'll think journey, endurance, the sacred hum of survival. They won't know every detail, but somehow they'll know you. Let's fast forward. Thousands of years pass. Civilizations rise and crumble. Your temples are buried by sand, rebuilt as churches, repurposed as warehouses. Scrolls decay, marble cracks. But somehow you remain, up there. Taurus hangs quietly in the sky, unfazed by war, empires, electricity, Netflix. Sailors still chart by your stars. Farmers still plant by your rising. Children still ask, "What's that one called?" While their parents squint up and mumble something about a bull and some very old story they don't quite remember. And you glow. Even as the world forgets the details, your silhouette endures, a memory burned into the universe's ceiling. But what happens when mythology and astronomy collide? When your story, once sacred, starts getting poked and prodded by scientists in lab coats? Well, welcome to the modern world, Io. Because your name? It's not just a myth anymore. In 1610, Galileo Galilei points a telescope toward Jupiter and spots something new. Four somethings, actually. Four tiny moons dancing around the gas giant like bees around a bonfire. He names them after Zeus's girlfriends, naturally. Ganymede, Callisto, Europa, and Io. That's right. You become a moon. And not just any moon. Io, the celestial object, turns out to be the most volcanically active body in the entire solar system. Its surface is a kaleidoscope of lava lakes, sulfur snow, and exploding geysers. It's like someone took your whole myth and carved it into a planetary landscape. Because if anyone was going to become a giant burning ball of unstable chaos, it was always going to be you. Scientists love you. They obsess over your plumes. They name geological features after every weird thing they can find in your original myth. Prometheus Patera, Zamama Sulcus, even Tavashtar Katina, which, okay, isn't Greek, but still sounds intense. You're a myth, a moon, a moving volcano. Take that, Hera. Let's step back for a second because this transformation from myth to astronomical object isn't just poetic, it's deeply human. Across time, cultures have taken what they fear, what they can't control, gods, fate, betrayal, flies, and given them names in the sky. It's how we cope, how we remember, how we find shape in the chaos. And you're one of the few who made the full journey from whispered prayer to glowing crater, from temple girl to celestial icon. But the scientists? They don't know the full story. They talk about tides, magnetism, Jupiter's pull. They draw maps of your volcanoes, chart your orbits, speculate about your molten core. They don't know what it feels like to have your skin shift into hide. They don't know what it means to run until your knees give out. They had to ache for silence while a buzzing godfly drills your thoughts into noise. They don't know you cried, even as a cow. But we do, because we followed you. Hoofprint by hoofprint, pain by pain, glory by glory. And now you stretch across dimensions, myth and science, sky and psyche. You are both sacred and studied, both legend and lab experiment, both survivor and satellite. Let's be clear, the irony isn't lost on anyone who knows the story. The woman Hera tried to reduce to a beast is now studied by thousands, not as a victim, not as a scandal, but as a phenomenon. And there's one last twist of the knife, or maybe twist of the crown. Peacocks fade, thrones crumble, even gods are forgotten. But you're still spinning, still glowing, still refusing to be erased. So next time someone looks up and says, wow, look at that moon, it's wild, maybe they'll pause just for a second and wonder, who was Io? And maybe, they'll feel something stir deep in their bones, something volcanic, something divine, something bovine adjacent. And that Io is more than Hera ever planned, more than Zeus ever offered, and exactly what you earned. You've made it farther than any mortal girl ever should have. But let's not pretend this was a clean arc. Start as a priestess, get turned into a cow, run halfway across the known world, end up a star and a moon, boom. Legacy. No, your journey is jagged, wound-shaped. It has layers, fractures, places that never healed right. And yet, you endure. You're in the stars, yes, in the sky, in textbooks, in constellation apps on people's phones, but you're also in language, in metaphor, in the very bones of storytelling. When someone says they've been put through the ringer, they might as well be invoking you. Io, the original marathoner of misery, cow sufferer supreme, unwilling champion of mythic endurance. But you didn't just endure, you evolved. Let's talk about your afterlife. Not the literal underworld, thank the gods you dodged that, but the cultural one. Because for thousands of years, artists have tried to capture you. Sculptors chiseled your face into marble, eyes tilted up in pleading. Painters dabbed their brushes in sorrow and gold, creating portraits of you with horns sprouting from your brow, always running, always beautiful, always doomed. Poets loved you too. Ovid, that gossipy Roman verse slinger, couldn't get enough of your saga. In his Metamorphoses, you're a major character, twisted and tormented, mooing in poetic Latin. He writes you into the great tragic catalog of women undone by divine attention. And through his pen, your story spreads across Europe, traveling by ink and parchment, like your hooves once crossed rivers and hills. It's not always flattering. You're often the passive one, the object, the lesson. Your story twisted to warn women not to tempt the gods, not to be too radiant. As if beauty is a crime and your punishment, fair. Historians still argue whether this retelling was deliberate. if patriarchal societies reshaped your legend to reinforce control, or if it was just the inertia of old myths being filtered through new, biased eyes. But either way, the result is the same. They took your voice and replaced it with a moo. But you're not gone. Your story is slippery. It resists easy definitions. One moment you're a holy priestess, the next a divine chew toy, then a queen, then a goddess, then a moon that vomits lava. You refuse to stay in one form for too long. That's part of your power, because you were never just a cow. That's the biggest misreading of all. You were a vessel, a question mark, a mirror held up to the gods' worst impulses, and to humanity's habit of making women carry the weight of other people's mistakes. And through it all, you kept moving. That's what defines you. Not the suffering, not the shame, but the movement. You never stopped. You ran when you were chased. You swam when there was no land. You climbed mountains, crossed deserts, endured the sting and the silence, and kept going. Even now, your name travels. There's an Ionian Sea, an Io Valley, dozens of species named after you. There's even a Japanese manga villain named Io, which, okay, not exactly canon, but the point is, you're everywhere. And not always as the victim. In modern retellings, some authors have started flipping your myth, giving you more agency, letting you choose to run, letting you bite Hera's hand, letting you speak, scream, or smirk. It's a slow rewrite, but a necessary one, because every time someone reshapes your story to center your will, not your suffering, they're reclaiming a piece of you, giving back what the gods took. And maybe in that way, you've become more powerful than any of them. Because Zeus fades, Hera hardens into symbol, Olympus becomes tourist bait, but you transform. You stay alive in new forms. And if that's not the ultimate mythic move, outlasting your gods, what is? There's a quiet moment no one ever talks about. After the stars claim you, after the moon takes your name, after your myth gets carved into marble, echoed in poetry, painted across the domes of Renaissance churches, and etched into the constellations farmers pray to for a good harvest. Somewhere in the folds of time, outside the shrines, beyond the ink-stained scrolls and myth-making machinery, there's just you, sitting alone on a hill beneath a sky that now holds your shape. And you're wondering, was it worth it? Because sure, your story is everywhere. But you never asked for this. You never said, yes, I'd like to be a symbol, please. Transform me into a hoofed cautionary tale so people can study my orbit in physics class or whisper about my beauty when they look up at Taurus. You never consented to be divinity's scapegoat. You were just a girl, wearing linen, serving in a temple, trying to be good. But in the logic of gods, your desire never mattered. You were a chess piece on a divine board where everyone else got to make the rules. And yet, you're still here. That alone is a kind of miracle. Let's rewind just for a moment. Back to the beginning. Back to that temple in Argos, before Zeus appeared in clouds or bulls or guilt. Before Hera's gaze turned into a problem that needed solving. Before the buzz and the burn and the 1,000-mile gallop into legend. Back to you. Still human. Still unbroken. Still whole. That girl? She didn't go anywhere. You might have grown horns. You might have forgotten how to speak for a while, but she's still inside you. In every version of the myth, in every retelling, your endurance is constant. You don't turn bitter. You don't become vengeful. You don't collapse under the weight of what's done to you. You move forward. That's the real through line, not Zeus's schemes or Hera's fury or even the divine fly. It's your refusal to break. And over time, people start to notice. Not just poets and astronomers, but regular people. Those who've been made into something they didn't choose. Who carry the weight of someone else's decision. Who know what it's like to be silenced, reshaped, overlooked. They look at your story and they see themselves. And they realize that survival is sacred. That transformation doesn't always mean defeat. You gave them that. Without speeches. Without vengeance. Just by enduring. And when we talk about what makes a myth last, that's it. Not the thunderbolts or the divine drama, but the small, quiet spark at its center that says, you're still here. Even when they try to define you by your lowest moment, by your transformation, your trauma, your tale, you rise. They made you a cow, you outran gods. They made you a moon, you became a volcano. They made you a constellation, you lit the way. You're not just remembered, you're felt. And that's the part no one saw coming. Not Zeus, not Hera, Not the scholars, nor the astronomers. You didn't just leave a legacy, you left a map. So let's talk about that map. Not a scroll, not a constellation guide, not a star chart etched in gold leaf. A different kind of map, the emotional kind. The one etched into your bones from running, from losing, from becoming something you didn't choose, and still somehow choosing yourself anyway. Because you, Io, unintentionally created a mythic blueprint, a pattern. For every story that came after you, there you are, in disguise. Ever heard of Callisto? Another follower of Artemis. Another woman seduced by Zeus in disguise. Another transformation. This time into a bear. And guess who did it? Hera, again, acting out her celestial fury on someone who had the audacity to attract attention. And just like you, Callisto ends up in the sky. Ursa Major. Another victim carved into the cosmos. There's a reason so many of these women are turned into animals. It's about control, about stripping you of speech, of power, of dignity, reducing you to something that can't argue back. You, the priestess, Callisto, the huntress, Daphne, the river daughter who becomes a tree, each one a fragment of you, but you were the first, the prototype. And in that, there's strange power, because every one of them points back to you, to the path you carved through the dust and clover, to the questions you forced the gods to confront, even if they never answered them. But it's not all tragedy. That map you left, it's not just a trail of wounds. It's also a record of strength. It shows that transformation doesn't end you, that being rewritten by pain doesn't erase you, that running can be resistance, and silence can be sacred, and even a cow can shape the stars. Even Hera, in all her power, couldn't stop that. Let's talk about her for a moment. Not as your tormentor, but as something far more complicated. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Hera wasn't just angry. She was hurt. The queen of the gods, betrayed again and again by her husband, watching as yet another mortal girl got pulled into their divine mess. It doesn't excuse what she did, but it explains it. Historians still argue whether Hera's rage was born of cruelty or survival, whether she punished women because it was easier than punishing Zeus, whether her wrath was the only weapon she had left in a world that never gave her real justice. And that's where your story becomes even more layered. Because in a strange cosmic way, you and Hera are both prisoners of Zeus's whims, both reshaped by his desire, both reacting in the only ways you know how, one with fury, one with flight. You ran, she lashed out, different paths, same pain. And the tragedy is, you were never enemies. You just ended up on opposite sides of a divine triangle you never asked to join. Now, across the millennia, readers see that, feel that. The complexity, the unfairness, the way your story has no real villain, just gods behaving badly and mortals trying to survive their fallout. It's human. And it's exactly why your myth lives on. Because the truth at its core, being caught in someone else's power game, being silenced, being changed, and still choosing to continue, is something people understand. Deeply, painfully. You left us that map, and people still follow it when they name their scars, when they find themselves and their stories rewritten without consent, when they speak, finally, after years of mooing in metaphors. That's your legacy, Io. Not the cow, not the constellation, but the blueprint for what it means to survive the gods. You didn't ask to be famous, and yet here you are, threaded into star charts, tangled in Greek tragedy syllabi, orbiting Jupiter in volcanic splendor, haunting paintings and operas, and now even bedtime YouTube videos. But what people really remember isn't the horns or the hooves. It's the running. Let's unpack that. Because what you did was more than just a desperate sprint across continents. It wasn't just about fleeing Hera, or Zeus, or a stinging fly with a vendetta. No, what you did was turn motion into meaning. You created a narrative out of movement. Every step you took was a refusal. Every river you crossed, a rejection. Every time you collapsed from exhaustion, then stood up anyway, you redefined power. People always think strength is in the strike, the sword, the spell. But you showed that sometimes it's just the act of putting one foot forward again and again while the whole world is telling you you're not allowed to exist. That's what stuck. Not the divine meddling, not even the revenge, but the walk, the stumble, the crawl. Across the Aegean, they told stories of your path, the cow road. They traced your journey like it was a pilgrimage, a holy road of suffering and survival. And long after people forgot which gods did what to whom, they remembered the trail. That ancient migration, burned into myth. That matters. Because storytelling, at its heart, is about creating meaning from pain. And yours got told more times than most. But let's not pretend it was always told well. In some versions, you're a helpless pawn. In others, you're little more than an excuse for Zeus to flash his lightning again. There are tales where you're barely even mentioned, reduced to the girl who became the cow. No name, no voice, just moo. You'd probably roll your eyes. But here's the secret about myths: they're alive, they shift, they adapt. And every time someone tells your story a little differently, puts you at the center instead of the sidelines, they're restoring what was taken. And people are starting to do that more. Writers, artists, filmmakers, they're noting the gaps in your legend and filling them in with care. They're asking, what did Io feel? What did she want? What did it cost her to become immortal? And they're realizing something. You weren't weak. You were exhausted. There's a difference. You never had a moment to grieve, to scream, to say no. You didn't have time to build armor or plot vengeance or even pick a direction. You just ran. But maybe running was your revolution. Because if you'd stayed, if you'd let them define you, you'd be a footnote. Instead, you became a force. And when people see you now, high above the earth, whether as a set of stars or a volcanic moon, or a woman whose name defies time, they don't see a victim. They see someone who kept going. Let's pause for a second. Breathe. Because all of this, the mythology, the astronomy, the retellings, it's heavy, but it's also human. Io's story isn't just about ancient Greece, it's about now. About anyone who's ever been reshaped by forces they couldn't control. About anyone who's had their story twisted, their voice stolen, their name turned into something they didn't recognize. And about the power of taking it back. You did that. Maybe not with speeches or swords or a perfect Instagram-worthy redemption arc, but with motion, with grit, with endurance that outlived gods. And that's the kind of myth that matters. The older the world gets, the more your story changes. And strangely, the more it stays the same. You, Io, become this curious paradox, both ancient and timeless. Your name might be whispered in marble column temples or typed into sci-fi thrillers about volcanic moons, but the core of who you are, the heart of it, remains untouched. You were hurt, you were hunted, and you kept going. That's what sticks. But here's a funny thing about myths. Once a story's been told enough, people stop seeing the cracks in it. They start accepting the official version, the canonical tale, as if it dropped straight from Mount Olympus fully formed. So for centuries, your story was framed by them. Zeus the mighty, Hera the jealous, Io the innocent sacrifice, cue thunder, cue tragedy, cue stars. But lately the curtain's been tugged back. People are starting to ask, what if that's not the whole truth? What if we read between the lines? What if Hera wasn't just a villain, but a goddess betrayed so many times she didn't know where to aim her grief? What if Zeus wasn't divine justice, but a serial manipulator cloaked in mythic flair? And most importantly, what if you weren't just collateral? What if you were a mirror? Because that's what myths are, really, reflections. Not of gods, but of us. And you, Io, have reflected a lot. You've been seen as a symbol of purity, of tragedy, of exile. In medieval Europe, your story was used to warn women against vanity. In the Renaissance, you were painted again and again, always looking heavenward, always about to suffer. And now? Now your reflection is changing again. Now people are saying, what if Io was angry? What if she remembered every bruise, every sting, every city she passed through without rest? What if she didn't just run from pain? What if she ran through it? What if the survival wasn't the end, but the beginning? Because here's something wild. In some fringe versions of the myth, you don't just survive. You return. You go back to Argos. You walk into the temple where you once served, not as a trembling priestess, but as a woman who's seen the gods up close and lived to tell the tale. And they welcome you. Not because they pity you, because they revere you. They build statues in your image, some still with horns, as if to say, yes, she was transformed, and we honor that too. Because transformation is not failure, it's evolution. One old inscription, barely legible now, worn smooth by centuries of weather, names you the first wanderer. Not victim, not temptress, not cow, just wanderer. That might be the truest version of all, because you did wander, but never aimlessly, and never in vain. Your footsteps became maps, Your pain, a mythic inheritance. You walked so far and so long that eventually the world began walking with you. And even today, when people feel lost, when they're stuck in lives they didn't choose, in bodies they didn't ask for, in stories they didn't write, they look up. They see tourists glowing quietly over their rooftops, over their campsites, over the glow of their phone screens. And something deep inside says, she made it. And maybe I can too. You're remembered, Io, but never quite fully. Your name gets passed around like an heirloom, familiar, admired, but slightly misused. You're the girl who turned into a cow. You're Zeus's lover, Hera's victim, the first starry refugee. Sometimes you're barely more than a line on a quiz. But underneath all that noise, the real story hums, steady, volcanic, eternal. You. You, who were changed and changed again. You, who never got to speak in your own myth, yet somehow carved a place in the cosmos no god could erase. Let's sit with that for a moment, because we're so used to mythological stories ending in triumph or tragedy. Heroes slaying beasts, lovers reunited, kingdoms restored. Your tale doesn't offer that kind of symmetry. No grand showdown, no miracle reversal, just an unbroken line of motion that outpaces everything chasing you. And honestly, that's more relatable, because most people don't get neat endings either. They get this, a slow crawl back to themselves through layers of transformation, memory, and myth. And in that crawl, you become a companion, a patron saint of the unfinished. But you also become more than myth, more than memory. You become pattern, symbol, template, Io, the archetype, the story under the story. It's why your tale echoes in so many places, across cultures, ages, continents. People who never heard your name still know you in some form. The woman pursued, punished, altered, and remembered, sometimes for the wrong reasons, but remembered all the same. There's a reason they call trauma survivors warriors. Because surviving, actually surviving, is a kind of war, not against others, against silence, against being made into something small. And when people look at your constellation, or that fiery little moon skipping around Jupiter, they don't see defeat, they see resistance. You were turned into a cow, and instead of breaking, you ran. You were chased by madness, and instead of succumbing, you moved through it. You were forgotten, then found again, this time with your name intact. Even the myths that tried to flatten you couldn't quite erase your shape. You still rise in the spring sky like clockwork. You still orbit Jupiter with a molten core. You still echo in retellings by writers who see the pain and the power. Because, let's be honest, you weren't just made into a cow. You were made into a force, and forces, they don't fade. They ripple. They reappear in other lives, other forms, other stories. They're reborn as new kinds of resilience. And you, Io, are one of the oldest. The myth that taught the world how to move when you have no voice, how to burn without apology, how to take a story meant to diminish you and turn it into a skywide reminder that some names cannot be buried, only elevated. And now, as you shimmer above rooftops and pyramids and quiet highways, there's a certain peace to it. No buzz, no sting, just stars and motion and breath. Your breath. Still moving, still rising, still shining. And now, here you are, at the end of the road that never really ends. You began as a priestess in a quiet temple, hands folded in prayer, sandals dusted with the soft soil of Argos. You ended, well, you didn't. You continued. You spun into orbit, you burst into flame, you glimmered into constellation, you became a story too stubborn to die. You didn't set out to become a legend, but survival made you one. And let's be honest, it wasn't fair. None of it. You never asked to be noticed by a god, never consented to be saved or punished or turned into livestock. You didn't agree to outrun monsters, cross continents, or be remembered as a celestial bovine. But you did it. And not because the gods gave you strength, because they didn't. You built it yourself, from scratch, from running when your legs shook, from screaming when no one could understand you, from collapsing in the dirt and still finding the will to rise, from losing your voice, your form, your name, and clawing each one back inch by inch. And in that act, in that slow and stubborn reclamation, you created something indestructible, something holy. You. People forget that myths aren't just tales, they're survival manuals. And yours? It's one of the oldest blueprints we have for how to keep going when it feels like everything's stacked against you. You didn't win in the way stories usually end. No grand kiss, no parade, no shining throne on Olympus. But you got something rarer: continuity. You kept being. Your story wasn't a neatly tied off scroll. It was a long, winding thread that wove through time, binding together myth and memory, tragedy and triumph, silence and starlight. You made pain into path, and the world, quietly, stubbornly followed. Now your name lives in ink and flame and orbit. It echoes in women who reclaim their own stories, in anyone who's been twisted by a world they didn't ask for and chose not to break. Your myth isn't a cage, it's a bridge. And even though your stars don't speak, even though your moon crackles with lava and ancient fury, everyone who looks up at the night sky and whispers Taurus or spots the name Io in a science book is connecting with something much deeper than they realize. They're touching the myth of what it means to survive being transformed, and to transform that suffering into endurance, into legend, into light. And that's the kind of myth that doesn't burn out. It just burns. Forever. Wind 100 words. The stars above you are quiet now. No more buzzing. No more hoofbeats pounding across continents. No more thunderclouds trailing divine guilt through the sky. Just silence. The kind that wraps around you like velvet. Look up. There you are. Steady, patient, glowing just to the left of Orion. Taurus, the shape they gave you. The story they tried to write over you. But even that name, even that form, it's yours now. Not theirs. You took it back. And now, there's no rush, no pursuit, no punishment waiting around the bend, just the hum of stillness. Let yourself breathe. Feel the cool air brushing your cheeks, soft as the Nile mist. Hear the hush of the night around you, leaves shifting, wind sighing, a fan spinning slow in the corner. Let your heartbeat slow. You've traveled so far tonight. You've wandered through temples and deserts, soared across time, burst into myth and moonlight. And now you can rest. Close your eyes if you haven't already. Let the starlight settle behind your eyelids. You've earned this. You made it through the divine chaos, the endless running, the silence, the sting. You survived the gods. You became the sky. And as sleep begins to blur the edges of your thoughts, remember this. You were never just the girl who became a cow. You were always the light in the dark. The spark that kept moving. The quiet fire that refused to go out. Good night, Io. And good night to you, dear listener. End of script. Sweet dreams.